he would make it work because he cared. He knew how to apply the tools of his trade. He used empathy, patience, compassion, humility, encouragement, and self-improvement as tools to help us be all that we were created to be. He believed that God planted a seed of greatness in every person. And he believed that his mission in life was to bring the sunshine and the rain so that seed could grow. He had a tremendous return on his investment. Not all of my investments have turned out as well as his. But since he decided to invest in people, all you have to do is look around. Not only in this room today, but those of you that are watching internationally, on every continent on this planet, his return on investment has been tremendous. And there's a little bit of Skip Ross in every one of us. In some of us, there's more than others, but there's a little bit there. And I'm not talking about the Skip Ross doll that sits on your shoulder and whispers in your ear and those things, although that's kind of cute too. Very special. When I get up to speak, as I do sometime, I will see Skip Ross, I will hear Skip Ross coming out of my mouth, and from time to time I will give him credit because it's the proper thing to do. But sometimes he comes out and I don't even know Skip came out. But he came out because of the return on investment. In my family, that return is generational. With Matt and Cale and with Alda and Lindsay and with the grandkids, we see Skip Ross come out in them. And it's a tremendous thing. The Dynamic Living Seminar. I remember the first time I ever heard it. I thought, could that be true? Do I really have everything I want? And could that be so? I sure don't like where I am. And the more I listened, and the deeper I learned, and the more I read between the lines of what Skip was trying to say, he was simply holding up a mirror for me to see what God had put in me so I could live up to my potential. Now, the Dynamic Living Seminar, as you know it, is not what it was back in the day. There are those of us who remember when it was a 2, 3, 4 day, 8 hour a day marathon. Skip, you just wind him up and he could literally go forever. It was, had it not been so astounding, it would have been revolting. His depth of knowledge, I'm right, aren't I? His depth of knowledge and understanding could not be contained in an audio or a video. It went on and on. So he took one of these marathons. It had to be 24, 30 hours. And he gave it to me one time. He said, would you edit this down for me? I want 6 1 hours. And I said, you've got to be kidding. And this was before we had editing software. Software was something you wore under your trousers. And there was no streaming. That was a crick in the mountains. And I did that. And it was at that point that I began to understand what Skip was trying to teach us about dynamic living. Circle A, my son Matt, I don't think had a birthday at home for 10 years because he was at Circle A in the summers, and Cale enjoyed that as well. What a difference Skip made. Back in the early 1970s, Terry and I were newlyweds and new in business. And for one reason or another, we wound up at a convention in California. And that's a whole other story. I mean, we didn't just wake up and were there. It wasn't like that. But I know the story, but I don't have time to tell it. That's where we met Skip Ross and, as they were called, the Hanson girls. And I found out as Susan and I have been talking, that's actually the same convention where Skip and Susan met. And so that relationship that we have with them goes back those 50 plus years. 40 plus diamond clubs, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of conventions together and international adventures. He was a mentor and a confidant and a friend to me. One thing you could count on with Skip was if it went in his ears, it didn't mean it would come out his mouth. He could listen, and no one else would ever know that you had talked with him. That made him a very important person in many people's life. He never gave me advice. I would call him and ask for advice, and instead he would give me options. And we would have this long conversation. I would get all these options, and I would have to get to the end of the conversation and say, now, let me ask you this. If you were me, what would you do? And then he'd start giving me more options. He wanted us to make sure that we made those decisions on our own. We didn't see each other much at home. Although they just live in Sarasota and we in Tampa, we just didn't see each other very much because we were busy. But on trips and at Diamond Club, we would literally spend hours sitting and talking. For my benefit, not for his. And we would talk about our families, and we would talk about our business, and we would talk about the Bible, and we would talk about the future. And we would laugh, and we would cry, and we would pray. And that's who Skip was. I never heard him say a single bad word about a single person in all of my time with him. Never. I tried to get him to, because I needed some help with a few people. And then to close, a few personal observations. He was very good at what he did. I mean, he was really, really good at what he did. You won't see another one like that. Now, you'll see others that are good, but you won't see another one like that. He was a good thinker. He was a good communicator. He was a good writer. He held that mirror up so that we could see who we were. And it was not a natural. I think sometimes we biff things off as saying, well, he was a natural this or a natural that. He was not a natural. He was really kind of a timid man in many ways. And he stood on stage not for his benefit, but for our benefit. I think, knowing Skip, he would much rather have been in the front row listening to you than you have been on the front row listening to him. And there was no more daunting task than to be on stage and look down and see him encouraging you with a smile, laughing at the right time, clapping at the right time, and crying at the right time. He studied and he prepared. He always over-prepared. He would ask me before he went on stage, Bob, how much time do I have? And I said, well, you know, we've talked about this. There'll be a clock there. He would say, okay. He always was very careful of the clock. And he would say, I have 5 points. And if he had an hour, it would come down to about 55 minutes, and he just finished point 2. And then 3, 4, and 5, boom. They came out in 5 minutes, and that was it. And he was done. But he over-prepared. He could dig deeper on a single thought than anyone I have ever known in my life. I would take a thought and make a point. He would take a thought and build a series. It was really incredible. High in the Alps, it said that there's a plaque. And it's a plaque that's dedicated to a faithful guide who perished rescuing an amateur climber. And the plaque simply says, he died climbing. What a tribute that is to that rescuer. And that reminds me of Skip. In his later years, his talks, whether they were public or private, were richer and fuller and deeper because he was still learning. He was still growing. He was still exploring. And so today we're here to celebrate Skip, because Skip died climbing. May God bless us all to follow his good example.